Computer. Here we are.
Yeah,
Hey, Amy, it's so exciting to be with you. You're in Boston.
I'm in Boston today. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm here in Richmond. But you brought to me An Object of Beauty
hmm
by Steve Martin. So I guess we'll just kind of dive right into it of like, when did you read this book?
I read this book pretty close to when it came out. So I believe it came out in 2010,
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken. And I did have the hardcover, but in true book hoarder fashion, I could not actually locate it. It is like I had a mental picture of where on my shelves it was. I couldn't find it. So I did order the paperback so I could reread it.
Mhm.
And my only sadness in the paperback, so number one, the reread was just as good as back, I guess, 15-ish years, almost 16 years ago. But the hardcover version had all of the art images were
Yeah.
in color and they were beautiful. So not so in
Not
the in black and white in this paperback edition. So
well, and I will tell you, I listened to it and I got an ebook copy from Hoopla, the
oh
app,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
library app, and
Yep.
they had the Hoopla because that's you can only read it on like your iPad. That did have
Right.
the color prints in
Okay.
there as well. So that was really cool to actually get to see it. Because at first I was just listening to it and I wasn't getting the full effect of
Yeah.
all the different art that he's talking about.
Mhm.
So I guess the question is, what brought you to the book then?
Okay, so I am an art nerd, and when I
Mhm.
say art, I would say equal opportunity art, like art in all its forms, genres, permutations. So music, like I think a lot of people that know me would say, "Oh, music is her true love." But then some people that know me in different settings would say, "Oh, she's a visual art lover," and my PhD is in literature, so there's that medium too. So I just have loved the arts. And also, I just like have a weird fascination with Steve Martin, number one. Like, let me just say that. He is the true definition of a polymath. And if people do not know what that is, it is like truly someone that is not just proficient in multiple areas, but like I would say expert and highly skilled in multiple areas. And he truly is. I mean, like I think a lot of people know him as a comedian, a lot of people know him as an actor, maybe a screenwriter, a director, as of late, a banjo player, but he's a prolific essayist, and not for just like his like Joe Schmo's blog or something like that, but the New Yorker, like, really and writing these erudite pieces and a novelist too. And also a student of art. And if you read this book, and when I actually reread it again in preparation for our conversation, well, I can stop doing the data dump in a minute if you'd like, but I will
Keep
say
going, keep going.
it occurred to me, and I don't think it clicked for me the first time I read it, but I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really, and I know he must have been, I need to get him on the phone. Like, I mean, I don't have his number, but I'm going to find it.
We're gonna get it.
You are going to get it because Steve Martin, if you're listening, I know that he read John Berger's 1972 or 1973 book, Ways of Seeing, before writing this book. And if people are not, have you read Ways of
I
Seeing?
haven't read it, no.
Okay, so this is like a true nerd thing. So John Berger was a wonderful art critic, and my dates are a little, you can fact check me on my dates, but early 70s, the BBC had I think it was a six-part series, like documentary series that aired on the BBC called Ways of Seeing. And in Berger like went through the national galleries in London and really unpacked art history and really in a subversive way, sort of said, okay, the traditional way that we've looked at art is not really the way that we need to look at art. We need to look at it in terms of how we ascribe value to it. Art is truly not just an object of beauty, but a commodity.
Hmm.
He talked a lot about the male gaze and how figures of like women and women become objects of beauty. And that's, like right at the beginning when they're talking in Martin's novel about how different paintings are valued. The protagonist, Lacey Eager, is saying that, or maybe the narrator is saying how paintings that had older women were valued lesser than paintings with young women. This is all John Berger. So anyway, there was a six-part BBC series. Then it was later, all that content was cataloged into a book, which is a sort of a seminal work for art historians. And and I'm like, oh my gosh, now reading it, it's like it maps. So I'm like, he is so brilliant.
Yeah, he has. I actually was going to ask you, have you read his autobiography?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, we just read it. Actually, you and I have a Charlotte connection. We were driving to
Mhm.
Charlotte, which is like a 4.5 hour drive. So his autobiography is short, and my husband and I listened to it. Amazing. Also highly
Amazing.
recommend.
Hmm.
Yeah. Born Standing Up. And he
Lauren
talks
standing
about
up.
he got his first job at 10 years old
Mhm.
selling pamphlets at not Disney World. What's the farm? Knoxbury Farm?
Not Berry Farm.
Knott's Berry Farm.
Not
Yeah,
Berry Farm.
in California. That was Steve Martin's first job, 10 years old. So anyway, he's an amazing person.
Hmm.
So interesting.
Hmm.
Yes. So diving into the story a little bit, you already talked a little bit about Lacey, but she's our protagonist. She's not the
Yes.
narrator though.
No. And so actually, this is a sort of Charlotte adjacent connection in that the narrator of the book and the protagonist, Lacey, met because they went to Davidson
Yes.
together and studied art history, and then had a brief, like very fleeting romantic interlude.
Mhm.
And the narrator think, it's just interesting. Like I think always he was like many men that were enraptured by Lacey Yeager,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And were under her spell to some degree. And so both of them wound up in Manhattan working in
Mhm.
the art world, but in very different roles. And so Lacey started out on the ground floor, quite literally, or sub ground floor at Sotheby's,
Mhm.
and started working her way up. And I won't give too much away, but where the money was, right? And so she was very interested in those transactions and an astute observer of how things were valued and learn to ask questions. Whereas the narrator, Dan, is that
Daniel.
Daniel? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's terrible because I'm like minor character, like even though
Yeah,
he's telling the whole story.
right.
He was, writing for like Art Forum and Art News, and was more, I think, interested in using his training and his eye and the appreciation of art. And it's interesting, like, when you think about, I don't know, have you ever seen this film? It's called a documentary. It's called Exit Through the Gift Shop.
Is it the one about Banksy?
Yes,
Okay, yes,
yes,
I did see
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. And I think now that I'm thinking about this, I'm like, oh, this could be a whole course I could design because I think that would be a good companion to this. Or
Yeah.
to no, now I want to go back and rewatch it because that film, if folks aren't familiar with Banksy, this street artist, it really engages with the question of like, what is art, number one?
Mhm.
How do we value art, or who gets to decide what we call art? And then sometimes it's like if people want to possess it, then that suddenly makes it valuable. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Right.
And so for Daniel, he was more, I would say his positionality was more as the beholder, and the observer, the critic, and that's even his role in the novel too, right? The
Yeah.
his positionality is as the beholder. versus these other figures in the novel. And even, what's his name?
Which one?
The gentleman from,
Patrice?
yeah,
Yeah.
that want to like just, they want to possess things, whether it's
Hmm.
art, whether it's beautiful women, whether it's, whereas Daniel is more content to study and, provide the commentary.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think I think about Lacey. I mean, she's a female, but I mean, she also wanted to be in that world a bit. And so I think she had more on the line, and it feels like Daniel was more comfortable being like background, not as wanting to get caught up in the drama because there is drama and there is danger, right?
Right.
The FBI
Yeah.
gets involved at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and that's another thing that I think I must have glossed over. This is why I love rereading things
Uh-huh.
sometimes, that things that just like maybe are marginally important to you at the, first read, when you go back. So as you mentioned, I'm have a footprint some of the time in Charlotte, but in Boston, which is where I am today, and where I did my undergraduate education, which is 100 years ago, but I mention that only because it's apropos to the novel. I went to Simmons College as an undergrad, which is next door to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, which
Okay.
is referenced in the novel.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't even remember the first time reading this that the Gardner Museum figured so prominently. And the heist where the 13 paintings were stolen, because that was big news. It was a few years before I had started college, but I mean, my whole adult life, like, I mean, I still go to the Gardner Museum all the time, and you have the empty picture frames are still hanging on the wall where those stolen paintings were. So the fact that Steve Martin worked that into the novel, like, I don't know, like, this just to me shows his brilliance. I'm like, oh, he read art criticism, he knew all of these, masters, and not just like major European, canonical painters, but there were a lot of like minor artists, and even he talks about like the references. I'm like, oh, he did his HW, as we say,
Yeah.
and that he wove in the whole Gardner heist
Mhm.
and that. I'm like,
He did
good
a great
job.
job.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you too, because you have experience like, okay, so full disclosure, I have been to museums. I don't think I've ever been to like a gallery opening. I'm not at all in that world. We referenced the Mint Museum in Charlotte, which
Yeah.
like or maybe we were talking about before we started recording, love the Mint Museum.
It's
It
amazing.
is amazing. Yeah. So if you're in Charlotte, you need to go. But you have an art background. So like, how did reading this story compare to your experience?
Oh, I just think it's like it maps like in terms of it is a moneyed world. So like there are the layers that like my great grandparents on my father's side were artists, and they were the ones that gave me like my first, and I mean, I don't call myself like an artist in that it's not like what keeps the lights on or anything like that, but I like to dabble. And I did that, and maybe that's probably like what got me interested in art. And they were the ones that bought me early art books and things like that, which was probably sort of weird for a kid. And yeah, so that probably sparked my interest. So anyway, but as a young person, like that was my interest. And I think you have this rosy picture. I mean, I can't speak to everyone's experience, but like for me, and then you see, oh, okay, in order to really succeed, you need to be funded,
Yeah.
And so just having an art history degree from even a school like a Davidson or a Vassar or a fill in the blank, like a Yale, like it doesn't matter. you are starting out making like peanuts. And so so the things that people do, I mean, I'm not suggesting they are as necessarily, I don't have firsthand knowledge of or that I would cop to on a recorded, but that
This has
what
been a
people
long con, Amy.
I know, right? But what people do, but it is a world that is really reliant on money. And then because I am an eternal optimist and I believe in art for art's sake and I believe in the healing capacity of art and oh, that's something else I wanted to mention. That makes me sad because when something that should be accessible to everybody, just like having something beautiful to look at in your home or, on your desk or whatever is out of reach to some people because it costs too much or this, like that's sad. Or when museums become places or galleries become places that people feel that they are unwelcome and that they are a place that are just, for a certain strata of society or something like that, which they shouldn't be. And I don't think they are. And I will say so many museums now are working really hard to just change that model. I mean, I can speak specifically about, not only the Boston's MFA and the Gardner Museum, and also in Charlotte, the Beckler Museum of Modern Art, the Mint Museum, and the Harvey B. Gantt Center for African American Art and Culture have done so much to, how they have in Charlotte, they have Wednesday Night Live, which is when all of the museums on Levine Avenue are open, free, and they have programming every single Wednesday throughout the year. In Boston, the Institute of Contemporary Art, which is also referenced. And that was another detail they were talking about. So it used to be in this little sort of like little hovel next to a restaurant that I back in the day used to waitress at
Oh,
an old fire station. It was called Division 16. It was like a scary place because it was open until I don't even know, like 2 a.m. and it was dark in there. I could never
oh.
see. Terrible. But anyway, made good tips.
Yeah.
But the Institute of Contemporary Art was there, and then it moved to the Seaport, Northern Ave, and Steve Martin mentioned that in here. I'm like, oh, and about the fundraising campaign, and I'm like, he really was like in. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, all that being said, your question, how does it compare? I think it accurately captures like how young people, especially, get into the world of art, either as critics or makers, because they are idealists and they love it. And then sometimes it can be yucky. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be. It can be like that, like the gallery world and the auction, like that. Yeah.
Right. I thought it was an interesting thing that the book kind of almost spans like 20 years.
Hmm.
It starts like in the early mid 90s, I want to say, and then
Yep.
it kind of goes into right past the recession. And I thought what was interesting, because like I said, I'm not in this world at all, is the value of art and how that changed based on where the economy was. And I don't know, take me through that.
Yeah, well, and I think at the start, it sort of follows too, because it starts like in the early 90s, right around 1992, if I'm not mistaken, which is 2 years after the paintings are stolen at the Gardner, which
Mhm.
is 3 years after the first stock market crash in 1987, which was. I don't even think I had a bank account. I mean, I probably had like a passbook savings account that my parents managed, but like I was not a working woman at that time.
Right.
But I do remember being in school and that was like, shout out to Miss Webster who taught us about the stock market. She was like, today is Black Friday. And I'm like,
Oh,
this is stock market crash. I'm like, what is that?
oh.
But that was so 1987, that was the crash. And then there was a recession. And so that's when like art was worth like zilch. So that's why there were these heists happening because they're looking for the art that actually was valuable were these masterworks like the Vermeers, the Rembrandts, the ones that were priceless, from artists that were long gone, European masters that were, not only not alive, but there was scarcity of product, right? So you had that happening. And so at the start of this novel, they're like, okay, how are we going to make money in a world where, yeah, the market has crashed, right? And then then it is on the up. And then, it's during keep in mind that this is around the time like mid to late 90s. And they don't really talk about this, but that's like the tech boom.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought Martin's description of Lacey was so good. And this was my note. I was thinking, I'm a baseball fan and like sabermetrics, like and how like analytics transformed
Uh-huh. Oh,
like
right,
the
right,
sports world, like
right,
Moneyball, like all that.
right. Yeah.
Like Nate Silver. I
Yes.
told you I'm a nerd. Like
Yeah.
I teach at MIT. We we
Yeah.
we love data.
Yeah.
So, and on my in my notebook, I was like, oh, this is like her version of sabermetrics
Hmm.
because she's described as Lacey, what she's doing in the basement of Sotheby's. She hoisted pictures onto a carpet-covered table. She stretched her tape measure over their backs. She wrote down everything she could. She flipped them over and she noted signatures and monograms, trying to decipher artists' illegible scrawls, and she scratched around in the cumbersome reference dictionaries. Myers and Benezet to find listings of obscure artists so she could report a successful attribution to her superiors. During her first year, she saw the fronts and backs of thousands of paintings. She learned to precisely tap a painting with the back of her finger. A hard, stiff canvas indicated that the picture had been refined, usually a warning sign about a painting's point condition. So it's just like how she is like doing the analysis, right?
Right,
And all of that, like I don't know, I like data mining, right? And
right.
the analytics. And this is pre-tech. This is early. And so then I was thinking like, oh, okay, how did it transform? They don't really talk about that here, but I think that would have, well, I know it did really operationalize and allow for like online bidding for auctions. Actually, a friend I went to graduate school with, her sister was during that time, actually, this was like the early aughts, was working for Christie's in New York City
Oh,
and
wow.
like an art person.
Right.
And yeah, and then that was when they were like, allowing for online transfers of funds and like all this. So I think it really changed things and it allowed for greater anonymity
Yeah.
of buyers, the technology.
Right.
And then the recession because of, largely because of the real estate, market and
Mhm.
mortgages and all that. And then the value tanked again, and then we see like where Lacey is sort of losing everything. But then the interesting thing to me that, and I haven't really worked through this, this
Yeah.
isn't really giving anything away. I think it would be a question for a reader, which is where Daniel, I think throughout the novel, Daniel sort of has like a moral high ground.
Hmm.
But then at the end, I'm like, does he?
Right. Yeah.
And who and and who in the end is
Right.
profiting?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. So whoever, if you're listening to this, you have to read the
Yeah,
book and then come back to this question.
yeah,
Write us
yes.
and tell us what
I
you
want to
think.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is uh the scenario that happens. It's complicated, right? And so it's like
Yeah.
uh,
But like art itself, I
mhm.
just think it's such a subject that merits so much consideration. And I think that not only people need to read this book, but I don't know, so many other interesting things. Like, can I mention a couple
Yeah,
other?
go for it.
All right, I have some props here. Not props, like,
Perfect.
it's like show and tell.
Okay.
So I had my students read this wonderful book by Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross. It's called Your Brain on Art. And this is about the field of neuroaesthetics. And so the field of neuroaesthetics is really, in short, is that really promotes the idea that there is a synergy between the field of aesthetics. So that is like art in all its forms, music, visual art, literature, et cetera, and science. And that, like, we can see there are measurable outcomes. For example, when we as humans, like, look at art, or when we look at a painting or listen to music, our heart rates may slow, they may quicken, we may feel less stressed, we may feel more stressed. Like, so one of the things that Susan Mangeson, I always mangle her name, Mags, who's at Johns Hopkins, has done is she has started this think tank called NeuroArts and is working with like amazing people like Dr. Francis Collins, the former director of the National Institutes of Health, who I actually worked for like many years ago.
Very
And
cool.
he was the head of the Human Genome Project, and he's also an amazing musician himself. And he is working with the noted opera soprano, Renee Fleming, to measure the favorable health effects of music.
Okay.
And the National Institutes of Health is funding this research project they're working on. They're working with NeuroArts, and they have like blueprint cities across the US, and Charlotte and Boston have been designated these blueprint cities.
Cool.
And I think that a lot of people are realizing that Charlotte actually is on the forefront of this. The Beckler Museum of Modern Art has been working for more than a year now with Novant Health for a program. I may be like mangling the name, but it's called like Prescription to the Arts, and
Okay.
it's where individuals can go to their providers and get a prescription, like to go to a museum as a way to, or a performance, like with Blumenthal Arts, to combat, like isolation, loneliness, like so. Yeah, there
Wow.
are
That's
health outcomes. So like
yeah.
visiting a museum, listening to music,
Hmm.
like these are all good things.
Yeah.
So I think so we need the arts. Like arts are not a luxury, and I think particularly in our current social political moment, I think where there have been some attempts to politicize art. I think we need to resist that and instead hold to the notion that art in many ways or it is our historical record, right? And so it needs to be inclusive, it needs to be representative. People
Hmm.
need to see themselves, need to see their cultures. And that is a way to find healing, to find, release like all these things. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to think
Yeah.
about.
We were just at the Virginia Museum of Fine Art here in Richmond.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
And yeah, have you been there?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a cool museum. Shout out to them. They have Swiss Beats and Alicia Keys like
Hmm.
personal collection there right
Oh, that's
now.
right. I read that.
Yeah, and we were there last week and it was just amazing. And it was all like kind of art that like, you wouldn't normally see. It's all new. I think it's almost all exclusively Black artists. Loved it. Yeah, but it makes you think a different way and thinking about like other people's struggles or what they're focused on and think it was amazing.
Right. No, and it's so important. Like I actually just got this book that I'm working through. It's called A Story of Art Without Men by Katie Hessel.
Okay.
And it's so interesting because, I was thinking of the fact that like it's so true and shame on me. My undergraduate, I went to a women's college and I'm like, okay, I bet I can tell you, rattle off like so many male
Right.
artists, right? Like through the ages.
Yeah.
And then, but our foundational knowledge of art, I don't want to say it omits women, but it really like subjugates them.
Yeah.
And and then we think about like how differently women are depicted. So some of my favorite artists, like the artists, contemporary artists, like the artist Mickalene Thomas.
Mhm.
She's an incredible Brooklyn-based artist. And the women that are in, she does like, oh, her paintings are so beautiful because you have to look at them if you're not familiar.
Okay.
But her women are like how women actually look. And I feel like they're painted for women. They're not for the male gaze that John Berger talked about in 1972. They're women for women to look at and to see themselves. And and I think that's cool. I think, yeah, and Amy Sherrill, like who did Michelle Obama's portrait. I think that's, I mean, I don't want to, just put her in a box for just that. I think just a lot of people know her
Know that.
for that. But she has a fabulous exhibition right now, which is at the Baltimore Museum of Art, which if you've never been there, it is worth a road trip from Richmond or from where anyone is. Such an incredible museum. And that originally, that exhibition, I went to see it when a week after it opened, and it was originally supposed to be in Washington, D.C., but she decided she did not want to have it in Washington, D.C., given
Okay.
the political climate, and brought it to Baltimore, which is
Okay.
amazing, which
Mhm.
was where she lived for many years. And it's remarkable. But again, like in her use of, light, her use of color, and her portraits are just seen through the eyes of a woman are very different. And so
Right.
I think anyone can learn to, appreciate art
Yeah.
and think about art, and
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely interested in checking out what is it, Art Without Men?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the story of art without men. Yeah.
Story of Art Without Men. Perfect. Yeah, because it's so true. And it's not, I have lots of wonderful men in my life. I love
Yeah,
them very
same,
much.
same.
But like you, I also can rattle off the names of 20 male artists and I don't know. I don't know how many female artists, and that's on me to try to get better at it. And it's on all of us, I think.
Yeah, and then you think about the fact, and this is true with writers as well, that a lot of the people that were actually producing the work, the writers and the artists were actually the partners
Right.
of the men whose names are affixed to the work. So,
Yeah.
that tends to be a thing too. But yeah, this book, Katie Hussel's book, just came out.
Yeah.
I recommend it. And also, I think now we're in a time where, everyone's on this AI track. I think it's something we need to think about. Certainly, at MIT, we're talking a lot about AI. Can't ignore it. I just started reading this book called Unfinished: The Role of the Artist in the Age of Artificial Intelligence.
Okay.
Lucas Cantor Santiago.
Okay.
This just came out, and I'm interested. I'm only like 20 pages in, but I'm interested in what his argument is. It's related to musical composition, so I'm particularly interested in that because I I'm not going to lie. I'm like, oh, let's preserve. Like, okay, artificial intelligence can be something to operationalize, like
Yeah.
restaurant reservations or travel plans, but like,
Yeah.
let's get it involved with the thinking and the making and the doing. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's definitely a complicated time and like there's so many questions that are remain unanswered. I think it's going to be interesting, but yeah, I am also sort of like, well, can we let real people keep playing the music and
yeah,
making and
yeah,
doing drawing the paintings?
yeah. Well, my prediction is 2026 is going to be the year of the analog.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like bring it back. Just, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, just because James Marriott, the columnist in the Times of London, in his essay called The Dawn of a Post-Literate Society, he said that he cited data that said if Gen Zers continue their phone usage at current rates, they will spend, and this is not a misquote, 25 years of their lives scrolling
Oh my gosh.
on the phone. So,
Well, I have, yeah. As my Gen Alpha kid is like running through the house, I don't know if you can hear her. She's like,
no,
she knows
no.
I'm recording, and for some reason, I'm like, are you trying? Are you getting louder? But
Yeah,
anyway,
but see, that's good.
yeah, she's,
Signs of life. That's a
yeah,
good thing. Yeah.
yeah. I want to ask, and we talked so much about books that you're currently reading. Do you
Yeah.
read books like An Object of Beauty often? What's your
Yeah.
normal like reading pattern?
Oh, I'm like an equal opportunity
Okay.
reader. Yeah, I just I just read a lot. And I am also, I know you're a librarian, Gigi, like, and I love my local library.
Yay.
My favorite librarian, Sally. She knows I go and I'm like, where are my library holds? I still prefer, I'm actually looking. I have like my stack. I went the other day and I had like 8 holds because what I do is when I get the Sunday New York Times, I still get the print
Okay.
version. I will go through the book review and whatever is appealing to me that I think that I don't necessarily need to own, I will put on hold. So like certain ones, like this AI and creativity book, I'm like, oh, I may teach with this, so maybe
Hmm.
I want my own copy.
Yeah.
Same about the this one. So some like I'll purchase books. Like I still buy way too many books. And I could use Libby, the app
Yeah.
on Kindle. But I prefer a book. But in terms of like, yeah, what I'll read, like whatever just sort of piques my interest. I read a lot of nonfiction. I just like to know stuff. And I like a good story. So I like fiction. My favorite fiction, I feel like of the last decade was probably Hana Yanagihira's A Little Life, which,
Oh, really? I haven't read it. I'm so intimidated by that book.
oh my
I
gosh,
know
it
what
also
happens in it.
it's like traumatized me. That
Yeah.
also has like an art link as well.
Okay.
That yeah, that was like a very traumatic read. I was actually crying. But yeah, there are some books that have stayed with me. Nicole Adrian LeBlanc's book. Oh my gosh, what is the name? Oh, Random Family. Random Family.
Oh,
That's
Random
what it's called.
Family.
I didn't even look it up. It just like came to me. See, you don't need AI.
We don't need it.
Children, sometimes
Use
you
your
just think
brain.
the card catalog of your mind.
Hmm.
That book, I read that in, I don't even know, like 2000, like a long time ago. And it is one of the first works of immersive journalism. She spent like 10 years, something, or the better part of 10 years in the South Bronx and wrote this incredible socioeconomic study that is so like ethically sound, empathetic, and it reads like a novel. And you
Okay.
really feel like you get to know all the people over the course of a time. And I feel like, there are a lot of books that people read, like I think one they teach in schools now, like Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dimed, uh,
Hmm.
and like some of those, they're fine. I mean, like I'm not throwing shade at any of them, but if people have not read Random Family, because I am a true believer that there's no substitute for reading to grow empathy, like
Yeah.
none, like zero. And that is just like a master class in how to do that in a way that's not gratuitous. It doesn't condescend. And it's really like it expands one's worldview. But yeah, I mean, I think, and I think, I don't know, there are all these think pieces. I read one in the Atlantic yesterday about like the decline of reading, and people aren't assigning books. New York Times had one a couple weeks ago about like no one's assigning books anymore. And shame on them. I assigned 4 books to my freshmen at MIT. They grumbled because
Yeah.
one of them was Karen Howe's Empire of AI, and I had
Okay.
one smart beep, who said, "Do I have to read it if I already know like what happens?" I'm like, "Yes, sir, you do." And they read 4 books, like actual, and I'm like, "You cannot read it on the interwebs. You need the
Yeah.
actual books."
Uh-huh.
They read this. They read John Green's Everything is
Oh,
Tuberculosis.
okay.
They read Karen Howe's Empire of
Mhm.
AI, and they read, oh, Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious
Oh
Generation.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then that was when they were like, oh my God, we're cooked. That's what they all said. We need to get off our phones.
Yes.
And and I said to them, like reading is a muscle, and like critical being able to read and critical thinking, like that's the flex. It's not, because if you lose that, then you are cooked.
Right.
And so yeah. So
Yeah.
I read everything. I think everyone should read everything. And to tell people, oh, you need to read like these important books, that's hogwash. You need to
Mhm.
find something that's interesting.
Right.
And you, as a librarian, you find the right fit, like the perfect book for the person.
Right. Well, it's every book, it's reader, every reader, it's book. There's
Yeah.
5 rules of library science, and I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but that's
Yeah.
like rule 3 and 4.
Yeah. I mean, I always say like I grew up, with first uh gen parents, right? So like I like books, like we had the Holy Bible in like
Uh-huh.
a bunch of Bible concordances in my house. Like not like a bunch of books.
Uh-huh.
So the public library saved me, and I had a librarian, Mrs. Vanderpyle, and she did not raise an eyebrow. I was like a crazy reader at like 11, 12 years old, and I was reading like Valley of the Dolls or book on transcendental meditation and
Uh-huh.
Laura Ashley's book on home decor, like random.
Mhm.
And never she never said anything. Some of them were probably inappropriate. That's how I like learned about sex. I learned this, I learned that. I learned what I forget what the pills were in Valley of Dolls, like
Oh,
benzines or
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's so different learning that stuff through reading
Right,
and thinking through, because it's your mind as a kid, your mind can only, I don't know, like process and imagine what is developmentally appropriate for you at that time
right.
versus, and I always said with my kids who are older now, like they can read whatever they want, and people would be like, I can't believe you're letting your kids read what, like I don't care.
Right.
Like my son read that book, that big book, I forget the name of the author, called Cancer at like 9 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's also a freak like me with reading. And people are like, I can't believe you read. And I'm like, no, it's totally fine. Like you can read whatever they want. It's
Mhm.
so much better than letting them watch YouTube, and you don't know, because that's filtered through somebody else's lens that
Right,
is not necessarily,
right. Yeah. So make kids read again.
yes. And adults and
And
adults.
adults, yeah, absolutely. And I think to me that's always just read what you want. Graphic novels, I always
Yeah,
I have had many times a parent say, "Oh, I want my kid to read real books, not the graphic novel." And I'm just like, whatever is
no,
gonna keep their interest, keep them reading, because the graphic novels, honestly, you get a lot out of those that people don't even realize with those stories.
totally,
They're so well done.
totally.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Okay. Oh, actually, I was
Yes.
one question, but first, you picked our drink. We're drinking.
Oh, I did. All right, I'll show it. I'm not drinking out of the bottle.
Yeah, so La Marca.
Prosecco, yeah, La
Yeah.
Marca.
And can you share with us what is the connection with this and an
Yes.
object of beauty?
And I have it in a mug, not because I typically drink sham or bubbles out of a mug. I would
Uh-huh.
typically have it in a stemless flute, as you do. But
Uh-huh.
if I were in the library or in an academic setting, I wouldn't be drinking Prosecco, like I would get fired, but I would be drinking in a mug. So that's
Yeah.
why. But the connection was especially like in the 90s, but even today, La Marca is just like a reasonably priced, but quality
Mm-hmm.
bubbles, not champagne.
Yeah.
That's another thing I'm like a stickler on, because it's all about the language, like the precision. It is not champagne, it is Prosecco. They're
Right.
different, not made from champagne grapes.
Mhm.
But it's, like I think I got than $13 a bottle.
Right.
And that's typically what you get at a gallery opening or, a museum opening or something would be white wine or standard fare Prosecco.
Yeah.
So cheers.
Cheers. Yay.
Yeah.
And I like it. It has kind of like that toastiness I like in
Mhm.
like in a bubbly. So yeah, definitely. So love it. Perfect. Perfect for a Saturday afternoon
It
too.
is.
So I
It
love
is.
that. Who would you recommend an object of beauty to?
Oh, I I definitely think probably someone that has an interest, if not in art. I don't know, like novels that are set in New York City,
Mhm.
novels that are, I don't know, what we call the buildings roman, the classic like sort of coming of age story.
Yeah.
Because I think there are elements of this. I mean, it also reminds me another great, great novel,
Yeah.
Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch,
Yeah, yeah.
which is, well, part of it set in New York City, but is anchored around sort of like an art, like heist and
Yeah.
intrigue and all that. So I would say fans of like Donna Tartt's The
Mhm.
Goldfinch, or yeah, yeah, that's what I would say. Like,
Yeah.
and even just people that are familiar with Steve Martin, that really, from like one vantage point, that
Yeah.
aren't maybe familiar with his skill as a writer, like clock in. Like he is just he really is a brilliant writer. And
Right.
I feel like this is a novel that now I have to go back and look at what the reviews were at that time. I do remember I bought it at Brookline Booksmith, which is in the Boston area for anyone that is ever makes their way to the
Okay.
Boston area. I think it is, and I don't care what anybody in the world says, because it is the best bookstore in the United States of America. So,
Oh,
like,
okay. Oh, I need to go.
yeah,
I haven't been. So,
it truly is.
yeah.
And I go to bookstores everywhere. I'm not queen of the world, but I like to say I'm the queen of bookstores. And so, but Brookline Booksmith is just like the best bookstore. As a runner-up would be RJ Julia, which is in Madison, Connecticut. And part of the reason for that is the booksellers, their recommendations are always just like so spot on.
Right.
So
Okay.
and that I remember that's how I first bought it. But and my point is, I'm interested to go back and look now and see what the reception was back in 2010,
Uh,
because I'm going to be actually like incensed if this didn't get a lot of buzz,
Positive.
because it's so darn good.
Yeah, it is good. Well, I will tell you in prepping for this, I was going through and I happened to come across the book list, which is
Okay.
ALA's
Yep.
trade, and it was very positive. Yeah, their
Okay.
review. I can't remember if it was a starred review, but I was like, well, this person liked this book.
Yeah. And I now I wonder, I need to go see if Holland Cotter, who also is like a hero of mine, he is the chief art critic for the New York Times, also a Boston native,
Okay.
also wrote one of my favorite essays. It's called like, this is like 15 years ago, so I'm paraphrasing the title. It's like Time Traveling with the Muses, and it's basically about, he wrote it in the New York Times, published in the New York Times, and it's about his childhood growing up, like going to all the museums in Boston, like the Gardner Museum. His parents used
Mhm.
to like drag him, and that's where it cultivated his love for museums. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if Holland Cotter read Object of Beauty and wrote anything on it, because he was the chief art critic at the time. I mean, he still is, and he was at that time. So
Okay.
now I have to go back and look.
We'll find out. Find out.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. I wanted to take a minute and let you put point a spotlight on yourself or anything you're working on.
oh my goodness gracious. So, well, my name is Amy Carleton. By day, I teach at MIT. I'm in the Comparative Media Studies department. I'm also a writer. I write about a lot of different things, art, obviously, culture, music, a lot. As I said, have a footprint also in Charlotte, where I'm the co-founder of a nonprofit and music festival called Black Notes Project. And we have an upcoming pop-up weekend on MLK weekend. We're doing a Tiny Desk themed concert on January 17th at Booth Playhouse featuring NPR Tiny Desk producer Bobby Carter with
Cool.
the Bay Area band, the Philharmonic, which they won the 2024 Tiny Desk concert. So that's exciting. And then I also have a lecture series slash Substack called Lecture Notes,
Mhm.
and I'm sort of growing that ecosystem. What else? Working on a book about Wikipedia. That's my research, academic research
Okay.
focuses on digital culture, and Wikipedia is celebrating its 25th anniversary
Wow.
on January 15th. And actually, we're going to be having a big event at which I'm speaking on the 15th at MIT. And then later that day, I'll be flying down to Charlotte.
I was like,
So,
that's a busy
so
weekend.
yeah. So actually, if this, I don't know if this is going to be up before the 15th, but if anyone is in the Boston area,
Hmm.
come to MIT because that is going to be happening from 10 o'clock
Okay.
until 3 p.m. on the 15th of January, and it is free and open to the public.
Very cool. Well, this is, I just checked. I don't know if you looked, I looked at my phone. This will be coming out, I think, on the 13th. So
Okay, yes.
just in
And if
time.
anyone
Perfect.
is in Charlotte, they can come to our Black Notes Project pop-up,
Yeah.
and tickets for that are at blumenthalarts.org.
So cool.
And
Well, I will go. I'm gonna reach out to my family down there and give them a heads up
yeah,
early, see if they can
yeah,
get tickets.
and put them in touch with me, and so I can come
Yay.
meet them. I'm not the talent, but I would love to say hello.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, well, Amy, this has been a delight. I
Likewise.
had fun and I learned a lot.
Thanks. And everyone keep reading. And thank
Yes.
you, Gigi, so much for having me on.
Yay, so fun. Well, wonderful. And then we'll enjoy the rest of our Lamar.
We will. Okay.
Cheers.
Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. Bye bye.